40 years ago, in the heart of downtown Calgary, members of the Baptist Church crossed paths with someone experiencing homelessness. Moved by compassion, they felt called to serve and gave him a hot meal and a warm place to stay. From that moment of humble beginnings, the mustard seed took root.
Since then, we have helped thousands of people make positive changes in their lives, and we've expanded our programs and services to 7 cities across Western Canada. Over the years, we've walked alongside countless individuals, providing shelter, housing, food, clothing, health and wellness support, employment assistance, and more. We meet our community where they're at and work to provide resources to improve their lives.
The mustard seed is a place of resilience. It's hope grown.
Welcome to episode 2 of Hope Grown. I'm Kat Jones, one of your hosts. Today, we're taking a closer look at homelessness in Edmonton, the unique challenges, the programs making a difference, and the people behind the numbers who are driving change. Edmonton, Alberta, a city shaped by its river valley, with the North Saskatchewan River cutting through its core. But beyond its natural beauty lies a harsh reality. According to data from the Homelessness Hub of Canada, approximately 5,000 people in Edmonton experience homelessness. There are 8 shelters in the city, and we operate 2 of them. In Edmonton, around 65% of those experiencing homelessness are chronically unhoused, meaning they have been without stable housing for a year or longer. The longer someone remains homeless, the harder it becomes to break the cycle. But escaping homelessness is even more difficult when you feel invisible. Many describe feeling like ghosts on the street, overlooked, undersupported, and judged. In a system that often lacks empathy, the journey out can feel degrading. That's why community matters. For us, it all started in 1988, 4 years after we began operations in Calgary. A youth group from Central Baptist Church took a social issues walk and found themselves on 96th Street, coming face to face with the realities of homelessness. What these young people saw moved them, and they advocated to their leadership to take action. And from there, the Mustard Seed Edmonton was born. Back then, apart from outreach, we began focusing on reintegration and corrections support, helping former inmates transition back into society. Even then, we knew connection was the way out. Decades later, our impact has expanded far beyond those early days, but reintegration remains a vital part of our work in Edmonton. To understand why, we spoke with Debbie Fawcett, the Mustard Seed's reintegration chaplain. Debbie has spent years walking alongside individuals re-entering society, providing guidance, support, and hope. Here's Debbie sharing her insights on the power of second chances.
So I was wondering if we could just start off with kind of like a little introduction on what you do at the Seed, how long you've been at the Seed.
Okay, sure. My title is Women's Reintegration Chaplain, and I started in May of 2010. And my job is connecting with women who are federally incarcerated and helping them prepare for release, and then for women coming to Edmonton to support them through that release and in the early days of their time in the community. Yeah, so there's a federal prison for women in Edmonton. It's one of the 5 women's facilities in Canada, and it's for the Prairie region. So we have women that are federally sentenced, which is anything that's 2 years or longer, here. And so from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, parts of it. So regardless of where someone's going to be released, if that's kind of where they are from, this is where they generally start their sentence.
Okay, very, very interesting. So it's really kind of a large, diverse population of people that you're serving. Like they're kind of coming from all over the place.
Yeah. So you probably know this. There's 2 prison kind of streams in Canada, provincial and federal. Provincial is anything that's under 2 years. Federal is 2 years plus a day. And so that's generally the more severe crimes, they get the longer sentences. So I work with women who are serving anywhere from 2 years to life. And the age demographics, it's adults, because you have to be an adult to go to federal prison. Although every once in a while I meet somebody who was sentenced as a 17-year-old. So I work with adults. The youngest are usually, I think, about 20, and right up to women that are in their 70s.
Yeah, that's a really diverse group. What has your experience been like working with the mustard seed in this role?
Well, I love it. Clearly, I've been doing it a long time, and that's by choice. It's so interesting. It's sort of like a big question, sort of the answer feels big, anyways, to what's it been like. But career wise, it's very interesting. I mean, I meet really interesting people that I wouldn't meet otherwise, both in the form of the people that I come alongside to help, in terms of other people that work in the field. So, people that work at the prison, people that work in other agencies that support women, like Elizabeth Fry, or Catholic Social Services runs the Halfway House in Edmonton. Native Counseling Services of Alberta run an Indigenous healing house for women that I'm connected to. So the people that work there, the volunteers that have come into my life through this job that, want to journey with women who are reintegrating. But really the centerpiece are the women themselves. And with so many diverse backgrounds and so many different stories, with so many common threads to their stories. So, kind of from the perspective of the interesting people I meet, it's been great. Working for the Mustard Seed has been a really good home for the work. There was a short season there where we were with another organization that then would come to merge with the Mustard Seed. But the Mustard Seed's been a great home just with so many of the other supports that are available to people. So the ability to offer people clothing, it sounds small, but it's really a big part of what I get to do, because that's a pretty basic need. And when you get out of prison, if you don't have any clothes, it's hard to focus on your healing if you're like wearing the same pair of leggings every day.
This might be a bit of a large question too, but how does reintegration happen? What are the steps that you take? I know it's probably pretty individualized depending on the case, but is there kind of like a general formula that you follow or anything like that?
Yeah, well, good question. So reintegration for someone who's been incarcerated really should start the minute their sentence does, or even before. Like for some people, they're shocked to find themselves in that situation. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? For people that, there's some time in the community between when they're charged and sentenced, lots of people start working on themselves, even in that space there. But I've certainly met lots of people that they didn't really get their head into more of a pro-social mindset till they got to prison. And so really reintegration should start right about then. When someone goes to prison, one of the first things they do is an intake interview, and they do an assessment, and they come up with a correctional plan. So they determine what programs they think will help the issues that brought someone to prison. And it means up to every individual whether they engage in the programs or whether they just warm a chair. But for the people who really engage and really do the courageous work of self-reflection and honestly looking at their story, trying to have some insight into how they ended up in that situation and ended up in prison. That's really important reintegration work. Where I kind of enter someone's story is I get referrals in a number of different ways. I have a support group in the community that people who are in prison can come out to on a pass. So it's pretty popular. So women tell each other about it. And so I'll meet someone because they want to come to the group. Sometimes a parole officer will recommend that somebody meet with me, or, a friend will just tell a friend. So when I start working with someone, one of the things I'll ask is oftentimes they've already know when their parole hearing is coming up. And so I'll help them prepare for their parole hearing, which is a really important step in reintegrating. It means it's the difference between getting out and having to find your own place to stay on a statutory release and getting out and going to a halfway house, which is just what it sounds like. It's kind of halfway between prison and living on your own. And so it's staffed 24/7. They know where you are 24/7. You sign out, you sign in, you say where you're going, who you're going to be with. So my work has evolved into helping people prepare for that parole hearing that will determine if they're able to spend some time in a halfway house or not. It's taking people out on passes to attend the reintegration group, or maybe to attend to some things that they need to do in preparation for their release. So I recently took a woman to a registry so she could get her ID, and then to a bank so she could open a bank account, and just sort of some of those important things that we have in our life that if they came easily and naturally, you don't realize they're so important in living in a good way. So I help people do that. This Friday, I'll take a woman on a pass from the prison home to do a visit with her family. So helping people maintain relationships with the people who are going to support them when they get out. And then sometimes on release day, I'm there, pick people up, take them to the halfway house or maybe to visit to meet their new parole officer in the community, go get groceries. People often say the grocery store is one of the hardest places to go when they first get out. There's so many people there. There's so many choices there. They feel like everyone can just take one look at them and tell that they just got out of prison. And so I kind of figuratively do some hand holding in that first kind of foray into the community if they haven't had the luxury of some of these passes while they were out. Another thing that we do at the Mustard Seed is we create opportunities for women to come and volunteer from the prison. Well, actually, from the prison, and also when women are on parole or other releases where they might be living at home, and give them an opportunity to give back to the community. And well, it certainly helps us. We just had one lady for about 7 months come week or daily to our warehouse to help sort clothes and sort donations. And that daily getting on the bus, coming to Mustard Seed, seeing some of the folks who come and access some of our services, hanging out with our staff, really prepared her for a release that she feels so much more able in her own self to deal with some of the challenges of being in the community. I mean, you don't take public transportation and not see people who are using drugs or who might want to offer you drugs or any number of shenanigans going on public transportation and know that you can kind of manage it and not get caught up in it. So that's one way we were able to help that particular woman through reintegration.
Now, reintegration is just one piece of the puzzle. Our work goes far beyond corrections. It reaches into the very core of homelessness through the support we offer in our shelters. Across our 2 locations in Edmonton, Strathcona Shelter and Mustard Seed Central, we provide more than 120 safe spaces every single night. Mustard Seed Central is a 3-story hub. It includes a woman's only floor and houses Radius, a referral-based medical respite program offering specialized support for individuals recovering from illness or injury, people who might otherwise have nowhere to heal. But who exactly are we serving? There's no one-size-fits-all answer to that question. Every person who walks through our doors carries a different story. Many are listed on Edmonton's By Name list, a citywide effort to connect individuals with long-term housing solutions. This list does include a large percentage of folks experiencing chronic homelessness, while others coming to us for housing support are navigating episodic homelessness, facing temporary instability due to things like addiction, domestic violence, or sudden financial loss. Every situation is different. Every path is personal. And that's why we focus on meeting people where they are, with the right support at the right time for their unique journey, not someone else's. And running a shelter. It's more than just opening doors and turning on lights. It means making sure people have food, bedding, clothing, storage, and most importantly, care. Think about it. Every single day, hygiene items need to be stocked, meals prepared, clothing distributed. And when supporting upwards of 100 people, each with their own challenges, it takes an entire community to make it happen. That's where our volunteers come in. They are the heart and soul of our shelters. From serving meals to sorting donations or offering a kind word, they keep everything running. But their impact goes far beyond logistics. Volunteers don't just provide services, they provide dignity, kindness, and hope. And for many guests, that kind of support can be life-changing. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness, one meal, or one conversation to help someone see a way forward. Sarah is one of those people. She came to the Mustard Seed when she needed support. And what she found was more than shelter. It was a community that helped her get back on her feet. A quick note that in order to protect the privacy of our guests, the individual interviewed is referred to as Sarah. Her story is real, but identifying details have been changed to respect her confidentiality. Here's Sarah sharing some of her journey now.
So come COVID, I really didn't have the rent. Like I did work during COVID, but by August, they were able to evict me. Even though Ontario Works was going to pay the rent and make it up, they still evicted. So I went into shelter. That was a really traumatic time. And even as I pulled out of the building I was in, there were 3 different overdoses within a block. Yeah, it wasn't even really, wasn't a good neighborhood. But I met a lot of very interesting people. I consider my time in that shelter, it was called Southridge in St. Catharines, and it's a church. I consider it a very rich time. A lot of young people, a lot of different outlooks. I mean, it was always hard. Always hard. Yeah, so anyway, and then I met someone there that got a place to live and offered me a place to live. So it was COVID and like, girls in my room. It's a different situation, the shelter system there. So it was less people, and they had a room for 6 girls and a room for 5 girls. And the guys were downstairs. So it was men on bottom floor and women on the main floor. And we had to be out of our rooms throughout the course of the day, but we didn't have to leave the premises. At Foothills, you have to leave the premises for the most part. So it's a different situation. And during COVID, we were on lockdown, so we couldn't leave. So I went to stay with someone, and that was right after Halloween, and I was there for Christmas. And it was actually a reasonably good situation, although it was a bad neighborhood. Like, it was relatively... Like right next to our house at Christmas, there was a guy that OD'd on the front porch, and I learned more about drugs than I ever cared to know. So anyway, this person, I had met him at Southridge, and we did have a lot of laughs together. But he didn't get violent, but he got nasty. So I just walked out the door one Sunday, and then I didn't know where to go. I really was confused. But down the road, I knew there was a place called Out of the Cold, and it was another old church. And you could just sleep there at night, so you had to line up at like 7 o'clock, and you had to be out by 7 in the morning. But they fed you, they welcomed you. You listened to people coming off of drugs through the course of the night. You listened to a lot. It's really like sleep is the hardest thing. And you get it. I suppose the lack of sleep in a way helps you get through, but it's also really the hardest part. You're exhausted. You know, when you get to like someone older, it's just a level of, and your mind doesn't work. So in the course of that time, someone slept beside me one night that was sick, and they were too close because the mattresses should have been apart because it was COVID. And then I had my stuff in storage. Storage wasn't far away, but I forgot to close my storage unit that day. So they kicked me out. So I didn't even have my storage. Like things just got worse and worse and worse. But all through it, you just kind of coast, you know, and go, I don't know, there's systems in place. I never spent a night outdoors. When I first thought I was evicted, I thought, oh, being outdoors, I could do that because, you know, I lived in the mountains, I know how to camp, but it's not like that in a city. You got wild animals, you don't have fresh water, you can't light fires, you're not safe. One of the things I kept wanting to do is lay in the snow because it helps my arthritis, for one thing. And so I just make a lot of snow angels because if someone finds you laying in the snow, they'll think you overdosed and they'll call like an ambulance or something. But I would still like to just lay in the snow. Anyways, when I was in, it's called Out of the Cold. So I was in and out of the cold. I had to be outside all day. I knew it was going to rain. It was coming on to like maybe March or something, and I knew it was going to rain. So I was ready for rain, but a polar vortex came in, and it was fiercely cold, and I couldn't take it. And walked down this hill where the arts center is for Brocken. I could almost not walk back up the hill. So I took the bus back to Southridge, and they accepted me back. And it was like, I remember one of the staff coming to me and saying, you know, you're back, like, great. And I'm like, this is a very low moment for me. I understood what they were trying to do, and they understood where I was coming from, but it was a low moment. And then it was COVID, and I had a COVID symptom, so I went into a hotel for a week or two, which was like, I was all alone.
It's isolating.
And you couldn't even really walk around. But it was nice to be in a bed, have some time alone, TV, meals, all that. And then the person that I'd moved in with for a few months at Christmas was getting another apartment and wanted me to move into that apartment. And it seemed like things were okay.
Yeah.
So I moved in with him, but shortly after that, he got quite violent. He's a violent person. He's not an altogether bad person at all. I enjoy his company in many, many ways, but his solution to things is to hit. And that's not good, yeah. So then it got on, and I couldn't find another place to live, and I tried to go outdoors a few times, but I was unsuccessful, and I dragged my sorry ass back to the apartment, cold, needing shelter, and I was able to do that. And I was free to do my writing and my work in that circumstance, and I wrote a lot of poetry in that time. Then I got breast cancer. And I didn't want to, once they said, yes, it definitely is, and I'd been through the testing, they wanted to book a surgery date, but I knew I'd be full of tubes and it's day surgery. So then that got delayed because I got to be able to walk out that door living with this guy. And even under those circumstances, with cancer, with domestic violence, you could call it, they still couldn't find me a place to live, except these crack houses. Yeah, it was really a terrible, terrible situation. So my family did pitch in. They didn't fully understand it. You know, when you get hit, they think it's your fault. And I moved out from him and in with another girl that I knew was a bit of trouble, but she had said to me, you know, oh, I need a surgery done, and if I help you through your surgery, then you'll help me through my surgery, and if I help you, then maybe it's my way of getting into heaven. But I was with her a week, and I knew I couldn't live with her, so I left. And I came back one morning. She asked me to watch her dog. My stuff was still there. My rent was paid. And I said, I'd like to move a few things out when you come back from work. And she threw a great big fit, and she shoved me right where my stitches were. And I was only a week, maybe 2 weeks out of surgery. It was really brutal. And my sister still said that I was the common denominator, that people just don't understand that there are violent people that hit for no reason, and it's not your fault. I mean, maybe there's things you could do differently, but it's not your fault. There are violent people. So my son had come back from Thailand. He'd been there during COVID, and he brought me back out west and made me meals and took care of me, and I stayed at my sister's. And after a month of recovering from surgery, we flew to Calgary. Yeah, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And some old friends took us in. And then another friend, someone to help teach English to a Ukrainian family that he was adopting. So that worked out for almost a year, a little short of a year. But it turned into a very difficult situation. And then when I had to leave there, I really had no place to go. So I went to the mustard seed.
Welcome to Shelter Take. People experiencing homelessness and poverty are just that. People. They have stories, dreams, and everyday moments just like you and me. So we asked some of our shelter guests a simple question. What are you thankful for? Here's what they had to say.
I'm thankful for all the people in the community that are always thinking of giving back.
I'm thankful for Sam, my partner at the coffee house.
Thankful for Mike, thankful for Jesus, thank you for the mustard seed.
What I am thankful for? Life. I mean, existing and being here. I'm here for a reason, I believe. And I'm thankful for everything though, just to be alive. Just to be here, to eat, to have friends, conversation, interaction with people. That's what I'm thankful for.
My music is good, I love that, and the person I'm about to move into I also love, so.
My kids.
Your kids?
Yeah, I'm thankful for them every day, as a matter of fact.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
My daughter is 31 and my son's 34.
That's awesome. Are they both in Calgary?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, one works at co-op and the other one's an electrician.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you seen them lately?
I seen my daughter last week. I haven't seen my son in probably a couple of weeks because he's out in Revelstoke right now.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
I'm thankful for the mustard seed because they've always been there for me. And there's no other place I'd love to be than with them because they're always grateful and great people and a great organization.
Since the pandemic hit in 2020, the need for shelters and support services has skyrocketed. More and more people are finding themselves in crisis, fleeing abuse or war, losing everything in a fire or a flood, or simply struggling to keep up with the rising rent and grocery bills. But beyond how someone becomes homeless, there's the experience itself, one filled with stress, fear, and instability. Imagine constantly feeling watched, judged, or unsafe. Paranoia sets in. The streets aren't just cold, they're unpredictable and often unforgiving. There's a reason we call it sleeping rough. It's not just uncomfortable, it's traumatic, and no one should have to go through that alone. That's where connection makes all the difference. Real change happens when we bridge the gap between hardship and hope. At the Mustard Seed, that bridge is built on a loving community. If the Mustard Seed were a garden, our volunteers would be the water, our clients the blooming plants, and the soil would be our staff. They work tirelessly, preparing meals, running programs, and most importantly, being familiar, friendly faces in what can often feel like an unfriendly world. It's tough, often thankless work, but every day they show up, overcome obstacles, and keep moving forward. Few people have witnessed the evolution of homelessness services in Edmonton more closely than Megan Schuring, our Senior Director of Edmonton City Initiatives. Megan has been working in this space for over 15 years, starting with Mosaic Center in 2009, an organization dedicated to serving people experiencing poverty and homelessness. When Mosaic merged with the Mustard Seed in 2017, she continued her work with us, now having spent nearly 8 years leading initiatives that support Edmonton's most vulnerable. Over the years, Megan has seen firsthand how the landscape of homelessness has changed, what's working, what still needs to change, and the impact of a community that steps up to help. Here's Megan sharing her journey and insights on the shifting landscape of homelessness in Edmonton.
Well, probably in about 2007, my girlfriends and I was doing something at their church. They were having a Blue Christmas. So we were painting a poster or a sign. And we noticed this guy behind their church. We thought, oh, who hung clothes in the trees? And we looked and we went, oh my goodness, there's a homeless person. So at that point, we had not really thought about people being homeless or houseless and that kind of thing. And thought, well, this is terrible. We got to do something about it. So we asked him to come into the church and gave him some coffee and, took care of him and tried to figure out where he was from and what he was doing. And slowly, my girlfriends, they were both not working at the time, and started packing lunches and handing them out of the back of their vans at Tent City, which was at Gainers, which is on the north side under the bridge. So they did that. And then I was working for Christian Labor Association, and I always had leftover food from events and whatever, seminars. So I started taking those and feeding people. We'd go and we'd meet at, they called it the post. They'd post up, which is the bottle depot. So we started meeting people there. And then we realized the need was greater and greater. Like sometimes we'd have 15, 16 people out the back of our van. And we thought, we were sitting in a Starbucks one day and wouldn't it be cool to have a place of our own and do like lots of stuff for people? We said, we're 3 different ladies from 3 different churches, taking care of many different kinds of people. We said, we should be called, if this ever happened, we should be called Mosaic. And so we went to do point in time count, and it was on Fort Road and 65th Street. And we said, this is a really great location. I wonder who owns it. We walked in and registered, and we said, well, who owns the place? And they said, E4C does, but it used to be a youth center. And we turned the corner to go towards the back, And on the wall was a big mosaic and it said our mosaic. And we went, okay, that's like the big brick wall, the neon sign. This is what you're supposed to do. So started moving forward into that, and each individual church has supported us in getting this off the ground. And we opened our doors November 9th of 2009 officially, and then just started doing stuff for people. And it, started off as a place to gather for coffee, and then people would ask us to help them with their AISH or call their worker for them. And it just morphed. And in the years that we were there, we started with a zero budget and moved to a $450,000 budget by the time we merged with the Mustard Seed. But we did everything from housing to taking people to the hospital. We had weddings in the center. We had funerals. We had baptisms. We had all kinds of different things that it just became this hub for people to be in community. And it was really kind of cool. So yeah, that's how the mosaic started.
That's super, super cool. I love how it was kind of just born out of like just you and your buddies hanging out. I was wondering if you could explain a bit of the landscape of homelessness in Edmonton. Like you were talking about Tent City and all these kind of different organizations. Do you mind giving just a little overview?
For sure. Back then, I think when we did the point in time count, it was 692 people at the point in time count. So that was back in 2007, 8. And when we went to the Tent City in the north side, we met these people who became longtime friends. And it was really very cool. Barb and Rick and Papa John. And we were handing out lunches and they said, don't go to that side. That's the dangerous side of Tent City. Stay with us and you'll be okay. And they invited us into their living room. I say with air quotes, because it was their living room. This was their home. They had a couch, they had a chair, they had set up their space. So I'm very gracious and became longtime friends of ours. And back then, most of what happened was it was mostly drinking was the drug of choice for folks, and very little guns. It was mostly knives, and respect for people who wanted to help, respect for, there's always a little bit of rivalry and things like that, but it was not like it's escalated to today. So it was calmer. At one point we said, we really would like to spend the night out with you. And they said, no, absolutely not. And we said, no, we really want to spend a night outside with you. And they said, okay, we'll take care of you. And they did. They took care of us, but it gave you a different insight into nighttime versus daytime in Edmonton, and where you go, where you don't go, and what things were like at that time.
That's really cool that you're able to kind of forge those connections. Coming back to the mosaic, eventually, obviously, we connected. What was it like connecting with the Mustard Seed, and what has your experience been like since connecting and working with the Mustard Seed? How's the integration impacted the mosaic? What's changed?
Sure. So Chris Knutson, who is no longer with the Seed, but he had his own not-for-profit as well. He started a year after we did, and he merged with the Mustard Seed in 2016. And he said, you guys, you should come, because he knew how tired we were getting, because we weren't taking a wage. We were doing all of this. We were everything from the janitor to HR, and maybe sometimes all in the same 15 minutes. You were doing those two jobs. And there's just the three of us ladies, and we had some volunteers. And any money we eventually got, we would pay a security person who was also really like a host, is what we used to call them, not security. And so we were exhausted from doing all of that and growing so quickly. And then when we were invited to possibly merge, we were a little bit leery. We're like, oh, I don't know. Our mission and vision statements were almost identical. So that was really kind of cool. But it's like letting go of the baby. And so we're just like, I don't know, should we, shouldn't we? So we did a big SWOT analysis with our leaders of our churches, E4C and the Mustard Seed. And everyone agreed that we should move towards the Mustard Seed. It's where we aligned and would have the best success in integrating into that. So that's the logistical side. The side that is kind of cool is we said, okay, we called it and referred to it as an open adoption. So you could take our baby, but we still got to say, you know what, that baby is dirty, or that baby's not being cleaned, or that baby is, they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So it was kind of cool because we got to, have that open adoption kind of process where we still had input into the Mosaic Center, but at the same time, we were learning how to be part of a bigger organization. And there's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of blessings that came from that. things that we couldn't forward on our own, being a small organization, having an HR, having someone who can really vet your volunteers, having people to rely on to do the payroll and all kinds of things like that. It was almost shocking. I remember sitting in my office and going, what am I supposed to do? I don't have all these different things to do. But then realizing that each of the three of us could start to focus on where our gifts lied. And that was fun because we got to really focus on the things that we loved best about Mosaic, but doing them with the mustard seed.
Yeah, I feel like that's largely what I've heard is that having kind of that centralized support was just so game changing. I wanted to jump back to Tent City a little bit. I'm curious if you could explain what Tent City is, what it's like. What did you learn, I guess, spending time with the population in that environment?
So things have definitely changed, and I can see the changes from back then to now. Definitely, there's been a huge change, shift in culture, shift in the drugs that are used, such a huge shift in community safety, all those kind of things. The amount of people who are homeless is substantially right now in Edmonton. Our last, it's not the point in time count, but an estimated count is 4,011 people. So that's a huge jump in the last 15 years. There was almost a code of ethics amongst folks that were unhoused back in the day. They were the most giving people. If someone maybe at a store gave them a thing of hot dogs and buns and gave it to them for free, or they scrambled up the last of their money. And we're going to have a wiener roast at Borden Park. Everybody get on your bikes and we're going to go. And they invited anybody. Anybody could go and be part of that. Giving, we may not have much, but I'm willing to share and give. Now there's lots of tent cities, or I'm not going to call them a city anymore because they kind of quash that. But it was a lot of folks just living, for the most part, peacefully in a large open field or with some trees around it so that there was shelter. And yes, taking things and working together to live together is basically what it was. It was like a community. But of course, in the wintertime or when it rains, it's horrible, right? And you see a lot of loss and how that tight that community was back then and still is today for a lot of folks. Before we got to the Mosaic Center, we do a dinner in Emmaus Lutheran Church. And then my girlfriend, who was on the music team, they would have a practice on Wednesday night. So all the people would come from the dinner and go just sit in the sanctuary, and they called it their Wednesday night church. And I said to the person, there's an old guy named Vern, and he's passed on since now, but I was just chatting with him in the pew, and we were just talking about lots of stuff. And then I said, why don't you come to church on Sunday? And he said to me, oh, honey, he says, I know who I am. He says, nobody wants to sit beside me in church. He goes, I know I smell. I know I drink. He goes, nobody wants this. This is a better place for me to come on Wednesday night church. I said, fair enough. And it's very funny because then I said, do you know Jesus? And have you given your life to Jesus? After much, I have a large relationship with him at this point. And he goes, oh, honey, I've been saved so many times just so I could have dessert. But yes, I do know Jesus. And that's the other thing that was surprising to me is a lot of the folks, I think I had this mentality of I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do good. I wanted to do good. It was all good intentions, but also introduce people to Jesus. The surprising part for me was that a lot of people already knew him. They just had these issues in their lives that they were insurmountable hurdles of maybe being through trauma and abuse and drinking to get past that and many different things like that that were so hard for them, but they love God. And that was a big thing that I learned, that I was far more blessed than I think I was a blessing. But now with tent cities and things, it's a little bit more dangerous because there's such a large amount of people experiencing houselessness in Edmonton that we just don't have the infrastructure to take care of them. There's not enough shelters. There's not enough housing. And why this occurred, there's a lot of different theories on why it jumped so much after COVID. There's a ton. And I don't know exactly where I am on that, but it's just become so hard. So people aren't even in what I would call a tent city. A lot of them are in just shelters with tarps over top of them or getting burnt because they light candles, and things seem to be a little bit easier back then for folks that were experiencing houselessness than they are now. I think because less numbers, the resources were easier to access, and sheer numbers is so hard. So Edmonton is a big city now. It's huge. It's over 1 million, and it's increasing in population. And another thing that happens is a lot of people from different countries are sold this bill of goods by people they have to pay money to. And they say the streets are basically paved with gold. You can earn this much money. And they come here after someone's taken their money. They get put on a boat or however they are transported here. And we're seeing them in our shelters with their suitcases because they were sold a bill of goods that's not true. They were told that you can get a job, you can earn this much money. And where do you go when you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you don't know where to see a doctor, you don't know how to approach housing? Because all of that stems from language, but again, being so in shock of such a different culture. So there's a lot of different things that are, I think, coming into play of folks being unhoused.
This has been Hope Grown, the Mustard Seed Podcast. Don't miss our next episode where we'll dive into the heart of our health and wellness services, highlighting how we support vulnerable individuals with essential care across our network. You'll hear directly from staff and clients about the real impact of this work. In the meantime, help support Hope Grown by subscribing and sharing this episode. And for more information about our mission or to get involved, visit theseed.ca. Thank you for listening.